Welcome back to another Kerbal Space Program video, sponsored by Incogni, the best way to protect your online data. More on them a little bit later. Today, I decided to do an old favourite of mine, build an air-launched rocket. It's just a nice way to mix up a rocket launch. Instead of launching from the pad, we'll instead strap it to a plane that flies up high into the air, launching the rocket from altitude, hence the name air launch. There have been a couple of real-life examples of this, namely the Pegasus rocket and the now defunct Virgin Orbit Launcher 1, which was dropped from the wing of a modified Boeing 747. Now, a chief advantage of air-launching rockets is that you save fuel by giving the rocket something of a head start, getting it clear from the densest part of the atmosphere with a much more efficient aircraft. It also has the advantage that you don't need any fancy ground launch infrastructure, just a regular old runway. And since the rocket's launch location is very flexible, thanks to the nature of aircraft being able to go to places, it makes it easier to reach different orbital inclinations. Just fly your plane to the right spot and then hit the big red button. They're not the norm in real life though, because they do have some pretty stark drawbacks. To start with, payload size is typically very limited, since the rocket has to be small enough and light enough to be able to be carried by the plane in the first place, and the rocket's design itself is made a lot more complex, with it needing to be able to structurally withstand being lugged around under a plane, dropped, and then ignite reliably. So there's a lot more points of failure. And that goes for the plane as well. You need a custom launchcraft with specially trained crew and strict airspace management. And, well, air launching has just never really proved feasible at scale in real life. Companies like Virgin Orbit tried, and then they went out of business and they don't even exist anymore. So why am I telling you all of this? Well, if it wasn't clear from the title, thumbnail, and the past few minutes of me building, I believe that I have a very practical and safe and viable and human solution to all the drawbacks of air launching. The air launch rocket needs to be small to fit under a plane, you say? And it needs to be specifically designed for air launch and can't just be any regular old rocket? Well, I am very proud to present my answer to all of these issues. Just strap a launch pad to the top of the plane. Why has no one done this? Because, hey, you then have a 100% mobile launch pad that can take a normal rocket to any launch location you want. Now, I guess it doesn't completely solve all the issues I mentioned earlier, because we do still need a fairly complicated and completely custom aircraft, but I think the savings that come with the ability to air launch more than negate the complexity of needing to design a completely custom aircraft that can carry a vertical rocket on its roof. Don't you agree? I placed an ablative heat shield underneath the rocket's engines to ensure no damage to the aircraft when the rocket takes off, and it of course has ample crew capacity for mission controllers to be on board right where the action is happening. And there's the rocket on the pad. Isn't it a stunner? Lowne Aerospace paid good money for this machine. But did you know that out there are companies paying for your personal data? Today's sponsor, Incogni, is here to make sure that your information stays safe. Your personal information is being bought and sold by data brokers, companies that collect your details from public records, social media, and even shopping habits. They package it up and sell it to advertisers, corporations, and sometimes the wrong people. In the US, people search sites take this even further, making it easy for anyone to look up your address, phone number, and even court records. That's a stalker's dream. So how do you take back control? Enter Incogni. Incogni contacts over 230 data brokers on your behalf, requesting they remove your information. They handle the objections, the follow-ups, and the repeated requests, so you don't have to spend hundreds of hours doing it yourself. And for those extra tricky sites that aren't on the automated list, Incogni's custom removals feature lets you request takedowns from additional places. That means even more of your personal data gone. This isn't just about avoiding spam emails. It's about keeping your information out of the hands of scammers, cybercriminals, and anyone with bad intentions. Identity theft, online harassment, and financial fraud all start with stolen data. According to the annual data breach report by the Identity Theft Resource Center, it went up by 72% in 2023 compared to the previous year. Protect your privacy today. Click the link in the description and use my code MattLowne for 60% off an annual plan with Incogni. Take control of your data before someone else does. Stay safe with Incogni. Ah yes, bear witness to the startup of those 8 Goliath engines as what is frankly my greatest engineering achievement of all time takes off. Well, it's not taking off yet, but we are moving along the runway. And doesn't it look kind of ridiculous? As you can see, we've already got a little bit of wobble. In hindsight, I probably should have put a slightly larger kind of vertical stabilizer on the aircraft, but, you know, with a bit of Q&E control, it should be okay. Now, one of the advantages of air launch in real life is obviously you can fly above the cloud level and therefore avoid any kind of adverse weather conditions. So that's one of the things we're going to do here. I made sure we were launching at a time where cloud cover is a bit dodgy, a bit stormy. Would be a good idea to launch above the cloud layer. And then, unfortunately, we don't really get much higher than this. Whenever I test flew this, I could never really get above 4,500 meters above the surface, which isn't really that high. But it does get us clear of the beautiful volumetric cloud supplied by the mod by BlackRack. So, yeah, we are now approaching kind of our max altitude. So, we're going to create a quick save. Here we are. I'm going to call it ready to air launch. So, the next steps require some finesse. We're going to throttle down to 1/3 or 1/4, I should say, thrust. We are then going to deactivate our Goliath engines and then ignite the 2 vector engines of the rocket. I also switched the control point to the rocket's command pod using an action group. And there we are. The reason we throttled down to just a 1/4 thrust is because I didn't want to just go max thrust immediately, because we would probably destroy the aircraft or at least damage the launch platform in some way, which obviously, you know, I want it to be reusable, right? I don't want to have an expendable multi-million pound bespoke aircraft destroyed every launch. So yeah, that's the reasoning behind that. And then we're just gonna, I guess, fly to orbit, and then we'll go and land somewhere and plant a flag somewhere. So yes, this unfortunately does require the I don't know how to describe it, but basically we can only ever save the rocket or save the aircraft. We can't simultaneously recover both, because you just can't do that in Kerbal Space Program. That was one of my big hopes for KSP2. Remember that? When multiplayer was supposedly going to become a thing, you could have one player on the internet controlling the aircraft, one player controlling the rocket, and together you could work as a team to recover both. Sadly, that will never happen. Maybe it'll be possible with Kerbal Space Program 1 Dark multiplayer. I've never played it, and I don't really know how it works. So maybe it's possible. Maybe there's some. I might just write this down. Maybe there's some way we can do that. But for now, we're gonna have to do it this way. So now we've achieved orbit. I'm once going to create another quick save, calling it orbit, and then we're going to reload the quick save from when we were about to launch. Now the tail fins kept on glitching out, so I had to quickly disable auto strut and re-enable it. And then here we go. We're going to get ready to launch the rocket. Just throttling down to half thrust this time. This is very ambitious. We've got a little bit of a temperature gauge there because of that slightly higher thrust level. As you can see, the ablative heat shield in the middle of the launch pad took the heat well. So there goes the rocket. It will probably just spiral out of control at some point, but whatever. This is all kind of an alternate timeline. We'll then reload the quick save where Jebel, Dyer, Kerman, Bill and Bob survived. Now it's just a case of flying back to the Kerbal Space Center runway. Now this thing, as you might imagine, didn't really fly very well. It was really, really hard to get it to pitch up, which I'm kind of surprised by, because we've got the massive space shuttle like tail fins serving as the front canard. So I'm not quite sure what. Well, I mean, it's a horribly balanced plane, I guess is the reason. But yeah, I had to optimize it for carrying a rocket. The rocket made it want to tip backwards on itself loads. So I had to have those massive airplane wings at the back to keep things stable. And came down a little bit hard, but nothing broke miraculously. So now it's just a case of getting this thing to stop, which easier said than done. I quickly stuck the brakes up to 200% on all the wheels, and I even got the Goliath engines in reverse thrust mode. That's why they're still firing at max throttle. And as you can see, despite all of this, it was all fine, because although we overshot the end of the runway, we could just reverse up and we could just pretend that none of this ever happened. There we are. Once again, apply the brakes and shut down those engines. And like I say, we can pretend that never happened, because of course, in this timeline, well, I guess not this timeline, but the canon timeline, it never did, because we're now going to have to crossfade back to the previous quick save in which this aircraft was lost, and we can continue on. I just lost the game. The aircraft was lost, and we can continue on with our spacecraft mission. So, We're going to set the Mun as our target. Yeah, this is kind of a small spacecraft, so can't really go much further. I guess that is one of the chief advantages I mentioned, or chief disadvantages mentioned, I should say, of air launch vehicles, that being that they can only have small payloads. So we can only have a measly, crude moonlander on board. I know, right? What can I say? So it's just going to be a case of doing our burn to get to the Mun. So we can take a look at the map screen and just watch as our apoapsis extends towards the Mun, into its sphere of influence, and then we're going to set ourselves on a collision course so that we can stage that kind of the second stage of the rocket, so that it doesn't get left floating in space forever. It will eventually just crash into the Mun harmlessly, leaving no debris left floating around. And then we can perform a little Apollo-style docking maneuver here to kind of reconfigure our spacecraft and deploy its little extendable solar panels so that we can go to the Mun. Now I'm doing a quick retrograde burn, obviously, so that the spacecraft itself does not collide with the Mun's surface. We are coming in a little bit inclined as well, so I'm going to quickly just time warp up to kind of a mid-course point, and then we'll do a normal burn on the nav ball, just that we're coming in equatorial. We don't need to, but it just makes docking with the spacecraft after doing our surface mission a little bit easier. And yeah, now that's all sorted, we can just go ahead and time warp to the Mun itself and do our capture burns. There it is. Looking absolutely stunning, courtesy of Lynx's Parallax Continued mod, which I covered last week, sort of. I didn't properly install it, unfortunately, so the planetary textures weren't working properly, so that was a whoops. But I've fixed it now, so doesn't the Mun look great with Parallax Continued? And mark my words, I will be going back to ELU at some point in the near future just to kind of make good of that mess up I did. I'll probably do like a... I was thinking, like, one of my more popular videos was a full colonization mission to Duna, in which I kind of, like, sometimes I do series, like Life on Lathe, for example, where I'll go to a planet and put a space station there, then in the next episode I'll do a surface base there, then in the next mission I'll do, like, a rover or something, and then some sort of craft that can link the orbiting space station and the ground station together, like a shuttle, things like that. So yeah, normally I do them as like separate videos, but for one video, I just did all of it in one go. So I just launched a behemoth rocket that was carrying a Duna space station, a Duna surface station, a Duna rover, and a Duna satellite network all on board. We just did the whole colonization in one video, and it was kind of fun. It proved to be one of my more popular videos, and then I never did another one of those since. I don't want the content to get stale, right? But I thought it might be a good opportunity to do that sort of thing on ELU. So send a surface-based ELU, and also there'll be a space station in orbit around ELU, some sort of satellite communication network, because obviously ELU is so far away from Kerbin, would probably benefit from one, and maybe some sort of like little hopper that can link between the two. So there'll have to be some sort of mining capability on board, so that it can have essentially infinite fuel, so that it can just go between the two things forever. That was an idea I had. So is that something you guys want to see? Let me know in the comments below, or any other suggestions for how I can revisit ELU and make good of my complete mess up of showcasing Parallax Continued. But hey, speaking of Parallax Continued, look at all this ground scatter with collision. These are all Mun rocks added by the Parallax mod. And here we are, touching down. I really like this Mun lander, actually. It's really small and cute, and Jebediah coming there, having an absolutely excellent time wiggling free of this rock. Yeah, those rocks have collision, which is great, but the janky physics of Kerbal Space Program shows no mercy, and sometimes you can get kind of weird ping physics. I call it ping physics because, like, your craft will sort of partially clip into the rock and then it will just get pinged away. Didn't really happen too much this time, but sometimes it can happen. For what it's worth, you can disable collision of these Mun rocks if you want. Like, I would hate to try and launch a horizontal little takeoff SSTO from this, like, rock field, but yeah, just I left it on for this video because it's just a bit more fun, isn't it? And Jebediah decided to do a backflip and almost break his neck. To each their own, I guess. And that's pretty much all of our surface activities concluded, right? We've taken our surface sample, we've run all of our science experiments, and of course we've planted the all-important flag. So now we're going to set our... I love how, like, the rocket is still labeled as an aircraft. I just noticed. We're going to set it as our target, and then we're going to launch far too early. I thought this would be a good point to launch because it's almost corpsed up to us, but I actually should have probably waited a little bit later on to launch. But it's no bother. It wasn't too bad to rejig our trajectory, does that work? To get ourselves on a fairly uneventful encounter with the mothership. And yeah, there's nothing more to say really other than watching our apoapsis rise up and the little spacecraft. Right, it has a surprising amount of delta V, this thing, for like how small it is. Well, I guess that's it, right? It's so tiny, it doesn't really require a lot of delta V to shift its very insignificant weight. But yeah, so we're coming in a little bit tilted, so we're going to do a quick sort of normal burn to make sure our orbit intersects with the motherships. And then we're going to go for target position 2 as the point of docking. So our target is behind us, so we want to go into a higher orbit because a higher orbit is a slower orbit. So being in a higher orbit, it gives the spacecraft, or the mothership spacecraft, a chance to catch up to the lander, which you can now see materialize before you. It's coming in on the inside, and there is our encounter there. Less than 1 kilometer apart. I did then overshoot things, I think. Let's see. So yeah, I kind of killed my speed relative to it, then burned towards it. And then we're going to do this time. Well, yeah, I overshot. So it's just going to be a case now just doing retrograde burns and then target burns until we reach the target. Now we can just do it all by eye. There we are. Now I did forget to add monopropellant thrusters to the mothership, which is kind of annoying. I would have liked to use the RCS rather than the main engine of the spacecraft, but ultimately didn't really matter. Speaking of things I got wrong with the design of this, I made quite the egregious blunder. I don't think I've ever done this before, and I've been playing the game now for over 10 years, uploading content to YouTube no less for over 10 years, and I don't think I've ever done this before, so I'm not quite sure how I managed this. But if we just get Bob Kerman back on board, now that he's recovered the science from the lander, have a look at the staging on the left. Do you see how I'm going to decouple the engine stage from the kind of the re-entry module that's got the heat shield to protect it during re-entry? I don't see a decoupler, and that's because I forgot. I literally, for some reason, just attached the fuel tank to the ablative heat shield, like with no decoupler separating them. I've no idea how I did this or what was going through my head, but that's what happened. I did do a quick experiment because Bill Kerman is, of course, an engineer, so I thought maybe I can go on EVA and use his EVA engineering thing to detach the fuel tank, but sadly he couldn't. So it's going to be a bit of a danger re-entry. So let's take a look at what happens next. So I'm going to decouple the lander, close our shielded docking port, which I feel like I don't really use very often. I feel like it's a very underutilized part in Kerbal Space Program. I think partly because you can't attach things to it when the docking port is open in the vehicle assembly building, but whatever, fairly minor. Now I'm just doing a desperate retrograde burn, trying to cut as much speed off as possible, and kind of worked. We are going suborbital in terms of our trajectory now, and in fact our apoapsis is nowhere near above the common line anymore, so we're definitely going to be landing here. And as we slow down, not really a heat shield, maybe a little minor heat shield. I kind of hoped that the lower stage would actually explode so that we could then use the heat shield to protect us, but whatever. Now we do only have 2 parachutes on board, so we do have a fairly heavy craft here because we've got a partial filled fuel tank and of course a big heavy Terrier engine. So I wasn't quite sure if the 2 parachutes would be sufficient at slowing down, but we can jettison the heat shield to which the engine and fuel tank are attached. So we can technically stage these now. So we're coming down 10.3 meters per second, which is a bit fast, but by decoupling those stages there, we're now coming down much, much slower. And get a nice little explosion to watch as we conclude the mission. So thank you so much for watching, guys. I do hope you enjoyed it. And of course, massive thanks to Incogni for sponsoring this video. It genuinely is a really great service that I actually use, so do check the link in the description. And of course, massive thanks to all of the people on the right hand side of the screen, my Patreon and YouTube member supporters. So huge thanks if your name is in lights there. And yeah, we have now touched down in the grass, another amazing parallax feature, and the video is now over.